Today's subject is celebrating neurodivergent therapists. And if you're neurodivergent, you are the subject of today's podcast. But also, I just wanted to make the most of it because it's Neurodiversity Celebration Week. And so I wanted to celebrate our neurodivergent therapists today. And why did I decide to do this? I'd really love to encourage neurodivergent therapists to embrace their worth, but also for another couple of reasons, and I'll tell you what they are. I do tend to attract a lot of neurodivergent therapists into my groups, and particularly when people who work with me are often neurodivergent. So that's the first reason. So I've got some lovely people that I work with who are neurodivergent therapists. And the second reason is that I am probably neurodivergent myself. And so I hold a special place for other neurodivergent people in my heart. I just seem to attract people. And if that's not proof that you like draws a like, I don't know what it is. But I think often what happens is that, particularly if you are neurodivergent, you can get affected by feeling not good enough. And I think the title of my group, Good Enough Counsellors, actually does mean that I do attract people who are neurodivergent, because often as you've been through your life, perhaps you haven't matched up to those expectations, the neurotypical expectations, and that's actually left you with feelings of not being good enough. And I think I often attract people to myself, either because that was my experience myself, or it's just that good enough name that attracts neurodivergent therapists. And so what I wanted to do today was really address that not good enough feeling, and to actually help neurodivergent therapists to celebrate who they actually are, because often you're people who can really help clients. So I really want to talk about this not good enough feeling that many of our neurodivergent therapists have. And it's really summed up today by something I was listening to, a podcast I was listening to, and it was a man called Ed Mylett, who I hadn't heard of before, but he must be quite big in America. And he is somebody who now reaches millions of people as a motivational speaker. And he was saying that he woke up in bed crying, and his wife said, "What are you crying about?" And he said, "It was because I realized that somebody a long time ago helped my dad." And his dad has now died, but was an alcoholic. And his dad actually got to the point where he was going to take his own life. But somebody else reached out to his dad and changed his dad's life. And that changed the whole way, the trajectory of his family life, with the result that this Ed Mylett is now someone who reaches out to millions of people and tells his story. Obviously, he suffered quite a lot of trauma because of those adverse childhood experiences that he went through. But it would have been even worse if someone hadn't reached out to his dad. And he said, "You know what? That person who reached out to my dad was probably somebody who was also a recovering alcoholic. But, you know, they used what they'd been through to make a difference to my dad's life, and look at the difference it's made to my life, and how many thousands of people, millions of people that I'm impacting today." I think the point of the story is that it's the things that we have actually suffered within ourselves that often mean that we can reach out to people who are suffering, who are maybe a little bit behind where we are today, and we can actually really make a difference to their lives. So we often help people with the stuff that we've experienced. Another thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about this is something else that I heard, and this is a chap called Gary Vee. If you haven't come across him, look out for him. He is somebody who's very big on social media, and he's like Marmite. You either love him or you hate him. And I occasionally tune into his stuff, but the first thing I ever heard him say impacted me so much. He had someone on his show who was saying how they'd been experiencing a difficult situation. And he said, you know what? He said, that thing didn't happen to you. It happened for you. And that really impacted me. It didn't happen to you. It happened for you. And whether or not you agree with that, I think it's a really useful reframe that we can use in our lives, that the stuff that's been really difficult, we can actually use that. We can make it work for us. And so there's been things in my life that have been difficult, but I try and use it for people. I try and use the experience to make a difference in the world. And I think often there's neurodivergent therapists who are doing just that. And that's one of the reasons why I want to celebrate. And I'm just going to give you a few examples of people who are using the fact that they're neurodivergent in their practice. And so, for example, you've got people who are dyslexic therapists. They just have a tremendous amount of creativity. And I often talk to dyslexic therapists who might use like mind maps, for example, because they find writing things difficult. They might use mind maps. They map things out in a visual way, and that can be helpful to clients. Or they've developed lots of visual ways of working with clients that clients find really helpful. So that's an example. Then we've got someone, I can't name everybody because I'm not sure that they're actually publicly out, but I do know somebody who's publicly out, and that's Louise Brown, who's a neurodivergent therapist. And what Louise does is she really specializes in helping neurodivergent people, so autistic or ADHD people. She particularly helps them in therapy. She particularly helps therapists who are working with neurodivergent people as well. And she's developed a whole model to help us help neurodivergent people in our therapy practices. So a big shout out to Louise. And then there's somebody with ADHD, and that is Yasmin Shaheen Jafar. And what Yasmin does is she's got the most amazing range of resources, cards, creative resources. She's got a whole computerized system of creative resources that people can use. And Yasmin is incredibly creative, incredibly productive in what she can do. And she just uses her ability to really focus in on her particular creative project that she's working on at a time. She can really focus in on those things and can be incredibly productive, incredibly creative. Now, I'm not saying that everybody is the same as those people that I've mentioned, but often you've got gifts that perhaps, you know, if you just unmask and allow those gifts to be there, you can really, really use them. Okay, so, you know, just in closing, I'd just like to really say again that it's when you're neurodivergent, it's easy to compare yourself with what neurotypical people are doing, but that actually does you a disservice because there's lots of ways in which you offer something that is really special to other people, perhaps people who are also neurodivergent, but also you can use the strengths of your neurodivergence to help other people, and that can be a real benefit to people in the world. And that's why I really want to celebrate our neurodivergent therapists and members of the community today.